Welcome to the Ear for Fear podcast, the horror movie podcast that boils and ghouls and dead alike are screaming for. Don't be afraid to listen as Rick and the Creeps bore their way into your brains, slither down onto your arteries, into your still beating hearts.
Hi, welcome to the Ear for Fear podcast. This is the podcast that talks about scary movies or movies trying to be scary. I'm Rick. I got Jake back in the house.
Hey.
Thanks for coming back out, man. Last time you and I did The Fog.
Yes.
Today, you and I are going to be doing a 2008's Let the Right One In. So you had recommended this one.
Yeah, and I think what am I going to say about this movie? It is a vampire film, but it added something new to a pretty well played out genre.
Yes, you're absolutely correct on that, and I like when that happens. It's like zombies are just so played out for me. So when you do something a little different, I'm like, okay, all
Absolutely.
right. You know, kind of, add a little something new to it. But before we kind of jump into this thing, do you want to do like a quick synopsis? You want to let the audience know what the Let the Right One In is about?
Let the Right One In, like I said, 2008. It takes place in a suburb of Stockholm. The story centers around 12-year-old Oscar, who is an outcast and a bullied kid. The plot thickens when a mysterious man and a young girl move into the apartment next door. And slowly but surely, we find out that something is rotten in Sweden.
Yes, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's right on the money. Before we start talking about it, we'll let everyone know there's going to be full spoilers.
1, 2, spoilers coming for you.
I will say this, man. I watched this once before, and it was probably a while ago. Like, I don't know when. Let's just say 10 or so years ago. I wasn't, like, really into it. Then rewatching it again last night, and again, I enjoy lots of things about this podcast, but now that I'm 50 and I'm looking at movies through a different lens, a
critical lens,
an older, critical, blurry lens, because my eyesight is shit anymore. And then I sit there and I know we're going to do an episode on it. I get to look at a movie a little differently. And when I rewatched this last night, I actually quite enjoyed this movie more than I did the time before. Yeah. So and that's a good thing for me. That doesn't happen that often. Usually I like it less. I'm like, hey, I remember this movie. I watch it. I'm like, God, this thing sucked.
Yeah.
And so this is definitely a good thing. Man, I quite enjoyed this movie. Swedish. So it's, so it's subtitled, which honestly, the subtitles were, I've watched movies where the subtitles are kind of hard to read, or there's just so much dialogue that I'm like, crap, I can't keep up. That's not the case with this.
And that was where my mistake was this time. The second time around I watched the dubbed version. And my own American ethnocentrism kind of came into it, where I'm having a hard time following the plot because, not a hard time following the plot, but I just always feel like they do such a terrible job dubbing films. The tone of the voice of the recording doesn't seem to match the tone of the film, and everything seems overly dramatic, or that they're a commercial, actors selling detergent or something when they're recording the dialogue. But you still get the gist of the movie, and it's still a great film.
Yeah, no, I mean, you are right in the sense I'll watch the ones with the subtitles, and then I'll watch the dub version, and it's bad. Like I don't even know where they got the actor to do the voice, and it doesn't match. It's so terrible. But I decided to do the subtitles, and I was fine with it. Like there was maybe one or two times where I wasn't quite able to read everything, but I'd seen it before, so it's not like I'm missing anything, right?
Yeah,
like
and a lot of times too, when I'm trying to read the dialogue at the bottom, sometimes I really want to pay attention to the visuals, and
Yes.
I really want to catch all the little things that they put in visually, but you can't do that or at least I can't do that when I'm reading the bottom of the screen.
I'm the same way. I can't. It's hard for me to do two things at once, and so I'll tell you what I liked about this movie. It's funny. It feels dirty.
Yes.
It feels very. I'm not saying that's a good thing.
Drab.
Very drab. Oh my God. I mean, I'm like, I always thought Sweden was a cool place to go visit, and I'm like, I don't never want to go here after seeing this movie.
Yeah,
it's just so depressing, but at the same time, visually, it just looked really. It looked really good to me,
yes.
Even though everything felt again dirty and just again dreary. And I mean, I don't even know if we saw the sun once in the movie. Everyone seemed again just. I mean, even Ellie's character, it always seems like she had blood on her, or she was dirty,
Definitely.
just grimy. It's like, take a friggin' shower or something.
Hair's greasy.
The hair, like Oscar's hair, I wanted him to have like a decent haircut.
Nope.
It was so just uneven, and it was messed up all the time.
He's got the Swedish version of the mullet happening, which I think this does take place in the 1980s, right? It's not.
Does it?
I'm pretty sure I don't see a cell phone in, but I think it takes place in the 80s. So you are dealing with a kid who probably just saw The Lost Boys, and he's trying to do Kiefer Sutherland's hair, but he can't be bothered to actually style it with mousse or anything. So it's just falling, draped over his face.
Yes. Real quick, Oscar, Ellie, how do you say it? Hakan. Hakan is like Ellie's. What would you call him?
I think the vampire kids would call him a friendly.
A friendly? Right? Really? Is that a thing?
Like caretaker? I don't.
He does all the dirty work. Like he goes out and gets. I don't know. He gets the blood, I guess, for her, because she cannot eat anything other than blood.
Yes.
I think there was a scene where he gave her a piece of candy and she was throwing it up.
Yeah.
There
are two of those scenes where you kind of. They show you what happens when a vampire eats something other than blood.
Yeah.
And the other scene, which this is jumping ahead, but one of my favorite scenes in this film is when he asks her, "What happens if you come into my house without permission?"
Yeah.
And she shows him, and I thought that was a really great thing. So.
Well, that really kind of plays to the title of the movie, "Let the Right One In." It's like it's a myth, right? Like the vampire has to be invited into the home,
right?
And so
you can read it different ways too. It's about let the right person in. Is this Oscar letting the right, love interest into his life,
into his little world? Yeah.
From her perspective, she needs a caretaker in one way. They don't really establish why she needs it, because obviously, if you see the film, you know that she's capable of, getting her own.
Yes, yeah.
But it could be very well that, from her perspective, let the right person. She needs a friendly, she needs a handler, and she's debating, whether or not to let Oscar in.
So it's funny, man, because you and I, before we started the episode, you were telling me your kind of idea, your theory here, and it sounds awesome. And I didn't even think about it. Your question to me was, before we started, was, what did you take from the movie that I maybe didn't take the first time I watched it? And I felt like there was this really kind of cool love story that was happening between Oscar and Ellie. And I think that's what I saw. But you tell the audience what you see, because, and I'm like, it actually is right on the money, man.
I think it's what your takeaway from this, one, you could see it as a coming of age fairy tale, if you're one thing, but I think it's a really good litmus test for a person's own cynicism. And that is this a sweet story about a boy that falls in love with a vampire, and the vampire falls in love with him back, and they, go right off into the sunset on a train somewhere? Or are what we watching, which, I mean, we established that she has a handler, a caretaker, a person that goes and kills people and brings her blood. Second time around I watched this, I realized what I really think is that Oscar, the boy, is actually just the new Hakan. And I thought back, was Hakan a 12-year-old boy that she seduced in one way or another in some other decade, someplace else? Is what we're watching just the beginning of her next handler?
Yeah,
And
kind of like a courtship.
Exactly.
She's courting him to be, because we know Hakan is older. He looks tired. He's sloppy.
He gets sloppy.
So there's one of the first kills at the very beginning. He seems so careless. Like, this was literally out in the open. There was lights everywhere. I know it was snowing, but it looked like an area where people would go on walks. And
obviously it was.
It was because, after he hangs up, he drugs the guy, he hangs him up upside down, he cuts his throat to get the blood, and then a dog rolls up. Right. And I'm like, dude, where are you doing this? Like, to me...
And at the same time, he has to go where there are people, otherwise he's not going to find people to kill.
Absolutely, but it seemed to me that he's been doing this for a long time for her, and he's careless. He probably just doesn't want to do it anymore.
Maybe subconsciously he's just done.
He's done.
He's ready to slip up and get caught. And
then we're going to jump around a little bit, because before I lose a thought, I want to bring it up. Do you think that Ellie basically seduced him, Hakan, when he was 12 or whatever he was, and is it possible they were lovers? Because there's a point a little into the movie where he goes to Ellie and he says, "Just please don't hang out with him tonight," where it feels like it's torture for him to see her with him.
Could be.
And so were they lovers?
That would be really interesting to think that Hakan was a 12-year-old kid that fell in love with this 12-year-old girl, and he grew up and she did not.
Yeah.
And now he is, which is another way of looking at this. Like, if I'm trying to pick themes out of this, like, abuse obviously is a huge theme. There, pedophilia, but also the difference in power dynamics, because you see an old man with a young girl and you think, oh, he's disgusting.
Yeah.
But really the power dynamic is completely flipped on this. She's the one with all the power.
Absolutely.
And he serves her. And then you see the same thing happening. Could Oscar actually be the new version of him that comes through? And again, she's seducing him.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of this stuff going on. If you're trying to play the game where what's the story about, and then what's the story really about?
Yeah.
And you have to kind of fill those holes with your own imagination. And for me anyway, it gets pretty disturbing when you start to do that.
Yeah. But I think you're onto something, man. Because I didn't even think about it, and now you're talking about it. The part of me wants to go, no, that they're in love with each other. But it's like, well, then reality sits in. Well, first of all, she's a vampire, and she's probably, they never say her age, but what are we saying? A couple hundred years old?
Could be. It's what does he say? It's like, she's 12 years old, but I've been 12 for a really long time.
For a long time, yeah. And so it's like, okay, so yeah, let's just say, and then doing that let's just say it's 300. Let's just throw 300 out. Let's say it's 300 years. Sure. Doing this, how many different handlers has she had over 300 years? And
it could be a lot.
Yeah, and was it the same as Oscar? Like, we know Hakan has to be replaced, and so is Oscar. Yeah, and when you look at it that way, it kind of sucks. It's kind of sad, man.
And
it's
you
like,
think about it too. Yeah, there would have had to be some kind of emotional investment on his part for her. Otherwise, he could have just walked out the door someday during the daytime, taken off, and left.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So there was a reason that Hakan stuck around to help her, and maybe that's exactly what it was. I definitely noticed that this time around I watched it much more cynically, from a much more cynical perspective than I did the first time.
I didn't. I watched it from this kind of love story perspective. Like, I understand she's a vampire. I understand she has to, there has to be victims and she has to feed, and there are going to be, casualties along the way. But I really, the fact that Oscar is this just kind of loner and he's bullied, and here she comes, and there was this connection, and they just seemed to hit it off immediately, and that's what I jumped onto. I understand all this other stuff is happening, but that was that love, and I typically don't do that. That's the thing, but it really roped me in.
You see boy and girl in a movie, and you think, okay, there's going to be some kind of romance there at some point. Two characters like that. But even Oscar, I see Oscar completely differently this time around than I did the first time. I saw him as the loner. I felt sorry for him. Mm-hmm. This time I'm watching it and I realize that Oscar's a fucking psychopath. There's a lot of violence inside of Oscar. I see Oscar now and I just think school shooter. He's going to be a school shooter.
Oh, shit.
I mean, he's really into true crime, and he's not like, a suburban housewife into true crime. He's into collecting, articles, and has a scrapbook. He carries a knife around with him, and he starts fantasizing with the tree, like squeal like a pig, and, stabbing the tree. So he fantasizes about doing violence. He's just too small to carry it out. He's too weak.
Yeah. And he gets bullied quite a bit with, I forget, there was a group of 3. They're his school chums. One is definitely the leader. I don't remember this kid's name.
And he was good.
He was good. He was good.
Face.
The other 2 they're reluctant on any time, Oscar's being bullied. They're just like, God, they either don't want to do it, or it's like, okay, well, that's enough already. And they take, and the one main kid always seems to take it to the extreme. And so it's, and I think what I like about Ellie is she's trying to give Oscar this confidence that you need to stick up for yourself.
Yes.
You need, and so
she tells him, hit back.
Hit back.
It won't stop until you hit back.
And honestly, I mean, she's right. Yeah. You know what, man? What I had found, I was thinking about this last night, because I don't want to say everyone has been bullied, but I know a lot of people have been bullied. I remember being bullied when I was younger, and I want to say it was maybe like middle school. At that time I was moving around a lot. So I think I went to I think within a span of 6 years, I went to 6 schools. So I was always the new kid, and I hated being the new kid. And I was kind of like a loner as well, because every time it was like, okay, every year is a new school and I'm trying to make friends, but it's hard to make friends because they're already established with other people.
Yeah, and kids are dicks.
And the kids they're fucking assholes, man. And so last night watching this, I kind of put myself in Oscar's shoes a little bit.
Sure. I
was that loner at 12 or 13. I wasn't carrying a knife around. I sure in the hell wasn't hanging out with a vampire. But I think my point is that what this movie did well for me the second time around was I can relate. And when I can relate to something that you're doing, then you have me. And
sure.
And so I think that was my ultimate point with that is I've been there, and I think a lot of us have been there, and some of us won't admit it, but we've all been bullied.
And we've seen it, even if we haven't, even if we weren't someone who got bullied or somebody who might have taken part in some bullying, we know this story. We've seen enough of it in movies. Like, you understand the concept of a bully to be able to at least imagine what's going on for this kid and how difficult his life must be.
And from being a broken, his parents are divorced.
Yes.
His mom, we don't get a lot of her. I think a lot of what we do get with her, she seems kind of that we get one scene when they're brushing their teeth and that was the one part, but every other,
and you get one, a couple of scenes with his dad where he bonds with his parents. But yeah, I think for the most part, the adults in this movie are almost what would you call it? The enablers of all the horrible things that are going on in this movie. All of the adults kind of, they're distant, they're distraught, they're disengaged from the kids, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think, you know, his relationship with his dad, we get a little bit that, you know, he seems to love his dad, but then there's also something that happens where he feels, I think, a bit uncomfortable. And so then that kind of changes that dynamic with his father. And then the mom always seems to be working. She seems to work nights because Oscar always seems to be by himself at night, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, it's Sweden, so it obviously is winter because the whole place is covered in snow, which, so he's outside a lot at night, and it's probably only, 6 or 7 o'clock, probably, right? So I don't see him being alone outside at midnight or anything. But I think that says a lot, too, about the way this movie is filmed and the environment that he's in. It's very, you know, almost, I don't want to say like communist, it's drab, like we said before.
Exactly.
And there's people living on top of one another, and then you have kind of a courtyard, and the building doesn't have much personality or any kind of an artistic flair to it. It's very much like a housing project.
Yep.
And he comes out, and it's cold, it's old, it's run down, not very well maintained. But in the same sense, the lighting that they use warm lighting.
Yes.
So they light it warmly, and which makes, and this was the big thing that I noticed when I watched it this last time, is how much the color red pops.
Yes.
So anytime you see a red sweater or you see the blood on her face, like red is a color that I constantly noticed has a significance around her. Buildings, the decor, everything is beige, brown,
grays, a lot of muted colors. You're absolutely right, man. Like, the color that did pop was mainly the reds or the oranges, which, you know, especially like the blood. We chalk it up to, you know, her being a vampire and the blood and stuff like that. And yes, no, absolutely, like, a lot of it's just, again, very depressing, very drab, but then that splash of color, you know, just to convey what's, you know, because ultimately what's happening here is, look, she's a vampire. So, you know, and
also see her too as kind of his alter ego in a way. She becomes the devil on his shoulder. You know, she's kind of his Tyler Durden almost, right? The person that they hang out and people kind of see, but really the two of them don't intermingle with other characters. So their scenes together are kind of, she's the one that's living out his violent fantasies in a way.
Yeah, no, you're right. So the first victim, that was kind of a disaster. I think he had to leave before he even got any blood. She got pissed off at him.
He forgot the blood.
He forgot the blood.
That comes up later.
Yeah. And then so she had to kind of go out on her own, and she just, I think she was underneath some like overpass thing. I don't know what it is.
It's because Hakan was in a diner with some of the other residents of that complex there.
Yeah.
And one of the characters, the one guy who I just couldn't get over that bothered the hell out of me, came over and said, "Hey, you want to join us?" And he said, "No, I got to go."
Yeah, I'm in a rush or something.
And all of the neighbors were hanging out and drinking, and they're kind of doing their walk home. I love you, man. I love you too, man, type thing.
Yeah.
And they split up, and one of the characters notices something under a bridge, and you can take it from there.
Oh yeah, no, I mean Ellie, and I don't know his name. Was it Jock or something like
Probably,
Joke?
or Mikhail or something.
I don't know. I know it started with a J, and I'm sure I'm gonna butcher it. But
butcher him all day long.
He was walking under, and then he sees Ellie there, and she's crying out essentially, "Hey, help me," or whatever. And then he goes to help her. He picks her up, and then she attacks him, and. And you know, she gets her feet on, and what blew me away, it was just, this was done in almost everything that was done. It was in the open. It was almost like they wanted to get caught. You know, even Ellie, like, I mean, because we see the neighbor across the way, the cat guy.
Yeah,
the cat guy's literally on his balcony, and he sees the whole thing.
Right.
It wasn't like anything was being hid. It was just there. And that's what blew me away, because typically in vampire movies, they're always so secretive, and they always got to do it in the back alley and no one's around and all these other things. No, this was all out in the open.
Yes.
You know, and that's what threw me off.
In the shadows, but It didn't throw me off as much because the environment itself is so unwelcoming that it's really just the kid and the drunks outside, and they're walking home, but people are locked up in their houses. They're nice and cozy, and just the one crazy cat guy is the one who
crazy cat
witnessed
guy.
something.
Yeah,
and by the time he gets everybody, she's kind of done a haphazard job of kicking the snow over the top of it. Doesn't do a very good job of hiding it.
No.
But Khan had to come and get the body. And
he had to throw it in the water, right, or something.
Now,
what was that?
It was, but here's the thing, because remember later on in the movie, when they're at the lake and when Oscar finally sticks up for himself, they're on the field trip where they're ice skating on the lake, and the two girls that have to go to the bathroom find a body in the water. Was that this guy?
Yeah, that was that guy.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, so I think he just, I don't know, man. I mean, he had to go. Obviously, she just left the body there. Ellie did. Yeah. He had to go take care of it. He threw it in the nearest place he could, which was. It was the water, and then and I think he pushed it down. He pushed him down with like a broom handle or something, just to try to get him out of the way so that he wasn't, if someone was walking by, they wouldn't see him.
Sure.
And then I think he goes to Hakan goes to, like, he's watching these. I don't know, these, I would say older, I would say maybe 15 to 18-year-old boys, and they're playing basketball.
Sure.
And he's scoping out the next victim. But everything was so sloppy and careless, man. Like, he grabs this kid. Well, his friends are waiting for him. It's not like it's some homeless person or stranger or someone that has no one. Literally, his friends are out there waiting for him.
Well, maybe he's getting desperate too. I mean, he can't do that forever.
No.
Eventually... anybody's going to be able to overpower him. Now, another thing you're thinking is he, doing so? Is he helping her in the hopes that she'll turn him into a vampire someday and that he'll be able to live forever? That's the cliche for when a vampire has a human helper.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't see it. I think he's tired. We're catching him on the tail end of his thing, and it just so happens that she's meeting Oscar, and I'm cynical, and I think that's exactly what's going on. Is she's training his replacement.
Yeah,
he's Tommy Lee Jones, and Oscar's Will Smith in the Men in Black, and he's the new guy.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels that way, man. Now that you say it, I didn't even think about that. I don't know why I didn't think about that. It's so friggin' obvious. But
she could be casing him too. She sees a kid who's bullied. He doesn't have friends. He's got, unattentive parents. Just a mom who's always at work.
He's easy prey, man. I mean, he really is.
Going back to the themes of abuse and grooming, even, if she were, for the lack of a better word, the pedophile in this story, she's targeting this kid who would have been the perfect candidate for somebody to abuse.
So it's interesting. I don't want to jump ahead, but it's on the lines of what you're saying. At the very end of the movie, when they're leaving together, it's like he's 12.
Yeah.
But
where they're going.
But they're just on a train, and they're I mean, they're starting a new life somewhere and so it totally makes sense that what you're saying, man. Yeah. I mean, because where are you going at 12?
Who knows?
I mean, she may be 300.
And we don't need to know. She's probably got that all figured out. They're going to the same place that, she took 12-year-old Hakan at the time. Yeah. They're going to go find some drab apartment and give somebody, whatever cash she's got lying around that isn't going to ask any questions, because we've already established that all the adults in this are turning a blind eye to all the horrible things that are going on. That if at any point a teacher or a neighbor or a parent had been even the slightest bit attentive to this kid, they would have noticed that something was going on.
Well, but he'd been bullied for a while, right? Yeah. And no one, you would think the teachers at least would know something. Like someone at, and then when he comes...
when they leave the classroom and the class is over and the teacher's out of there before the kid leaves, like, what teacher would bail out on the classroom with the kid still sitting there?
Yeah, and then didn't they hit him in the... I mean, what did he get hit with in the? Was it like a switch or something like something from like a tree,
like a car antenna or
something?
maybe,
yeah, when the one kid hit him and it literally sliced his cheek open, and he's like, I fell at school.
No, yeah, but that's the other thing too. Like something that's weird about Oscar is that they weren't getting any reaction out of him. They said keep hitting him. They kept hitting him, and he wasn't reacting at all. Like he just stood there and almost looked like he would have been disassociating from the act, like an abused kid might during the act. And he just stayed still, kept quiet, and I don't know. The more I think about it, the more disturbed I get with the ideas that are rolling around in my head. What's going on in this, but
right. Well, we know he's. I mean, at this point, he's definitely Oscar and Ellie have this relationship. He creates some sort of like. I don't know what this was. Some way for them to communicate through the walls, some sort of coding.
Yeah, he was looking through the book and he was learning Morse code. So.
Well, yeah, and they're hanging out. We get a lot of this. You could definitely tell he is falling for Ellie, and I don't know at what point. He kind of asks her to go steady. That might have been later on, and she makes a comment about not being a girl. And see, in my head, I just chalked that up. Well, she's a vampire and she's classifying herself as a vampire, not a girl. But then there's a scene later on when she's trying on or putting on one of his mother's dress, and he takes a quick peek to see, and it looks like she had been castrated.
Some kind of a scar, yeah.
Yeah. So
I know that both of us probably didn't read the book, and I just found out today that there was a book. So I read a couple of quick reviews, and someone had said like you get much more of her backstory, Ellie's backstory, in the book, and that's definitely something I'm going to go check out as the book.
Okay. Did it say, because what I had read, and I did not read the book, but what I read was, someone out there says, well, that she was Ellie was a boy, and then when he was turned into a vampire, he was castrated. And then I don't know, over time, did she just grow? Ellie just grew out her hair and perceived. The perception is that she's because Oscar obviously thinks she is, but and so I don't know.
Well, this is the type of story that I think what's more interesting than what's being said on the screen is what's going through the heads of the characters in the film. And in the book, that's the great thing about books, is you get to find out what's going on in the heads of the characters. So you get backstory on Ellie. You'll get an idea of what's going on in Oscar's head. So. Yeah,
because we're just only. There's only so much you can do in say. I don't know. I think this is close to 2 hours. There's stuff that I've. With his father, like, is that reason like they divorced? Is something happening with the father that he's just uncomfortable with? But we're just assuming it is by what we see, but we nothing's ever said. We don't know.
Yeah, you get 2 visits with the father, and the first time that he goes to see his father, you realize this is where he gets to come out of his shell. This is where Oscar is happy. This is where he's animated. This is where he goes and has fun. You're like, okay. He's living in this crappy place with his mom, who's probably working her butt off so much that she can't pay attention to what's going on with him. But when he goes to see his father, he has a great relationship with his father, and he gets to be himself. He's away from all of his problems. And then there's the second visit with his father, where the same thing's going on. His father's attentive. He's there with him. And then suddenly that other character comes in, and his father doesn't look all that happy to see him.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm realizing, what's going on is that his father's a closet homosexual.
Yeah.
And he told his boyfriend not to come around
when Oscar's there. Yeah.
And his boyfriend said, screw that. I'm going to come meet your kid. And he walks in the door, and everything comes to it. The record screeches and stops.
Pretty much.
And he goes right to the cabinet. The kid Oscar says, hey, are we still playing? And he's like, no, we have a guest now.
Yeah. And what did he bring out? Some like vodka, a bottle
of liquor, and that's it. We're drinking.
Yeah, and you could totally tell the tone. It's just and so I don't know if Oscar knows, what's happening. Maybe he does. Either way, he's uncomfortable. He's uncomfortable, doesn't want to be around it.
We realize, it sucks because it was kind of heartbreaking because you're like, okay, he's in a safe place now. Oscar's in this place where the only positive environment that he has. Yeah. And you realize, oh, that's not positive either. There's
something else. Yeah.
Well, not that it's negative, but.
Well, but I mean, the father obviously had his reasons, and and maybe the divorce is fairly new, and and the father himself is trying to figure out things, and so and then all of a sudden it happens, and it's like, okay, well, he doesn't know how to react. And then Oscar's uncomfortable, and it's, and so, it's tough because, I mean, like you said, his mom's working a lot, so she's probably tired. She always seems to be in a bad mood. The only thing
it's a compliment to the film, too, like that scene with the dad and the other guest, that they didn't have to have a scene where we're going to call him the boyfriend, has to pull him aside and say, oh, I told you not to come here. He says, I don't care, I'm going to meet your kid. They didn't have to tell us that. You can show us one little thing, and we can come to these conclusions ourselves. Something that seems as obvious as day now that we're, talking about it and you see it this time. This movie is very much the show, don't tell.
Yes. Yeah. Correct. Let's see. And I mean, it's sad, man, because it's like the only good thing that Oscar has going for him is this vampire,
right?
The neighbor vampire, it sounds terrible. It sounds sad.
And I lost all my sympathy for Oscar really when I realized, I'm like, this is a school shooter. This is a kid that if Ellie didn't come along, would have shot up the school at some point.
Yeah, I mean, he could have. I mean. Yeah,
I can't get over the fact he would have done something terrible later.
Man,
I don't think it would have ended well.
So then maybe it was a good thing that Ellie came along,
and maybe Ellie's the manifestation of that terrible act that he would have done eventually. Yeah. All the same things happened to the people around him.
Maybe
the bullies all got it. A lot of the neighbors got it.
They did. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Hakan, when he tries to get the one kid that goes south, he has acid on him too.
Yeah, and so I think he knows that either this one's not going to go well or the next one's not going to go well. So he's got this contingency plan. Apparently, it seems that way. It seems like a terrible contingency plan, but.
I think if it doesn't work out and you're going to be caught, you have to disfigure yourself with the acid. That way, no one can put together that you and Ellie, that you guys live together. That way, they can't go and find her. I think that was the idea.
Yeah. Or was it that because he spilled the acid when the boys were coming in, where he spilled the acid, so he didn't have it all. He didn't have the amount that he had intended to use. True. And that's why he was only able to disfigure himself.
Oh, okay. Maybe you're right, man. I mean, I don't know. Ellie goes to visit him in the hospital. She
walks in barefoot.
Goes in the hospital, and then I think I did love this scene. I had to actually pause it and rewind it because when she went out the door of the hospital. And the nurse is looking for her. She was on the building, climbing up the building. I was like, "Damn, that's cool."
It's great. It's great that the effects that they use in this were very subtle and very limited, and that when you did see her doing something extraordinary, like climbing up the side of a building, that's not the focal point of the shot. It was in the background of the shot. So it showed a lot of restraint on the filmmaker's part.
No, I had to stop it and and rewind and go, "Oh, damn, that's cool." She's like there the whole time, but she's not moving because she doesn't want to give herself away. And then she climbs up the building. She goes to Hakan's room, and there's this little scene with them, and then she ends up feeding off of him.
Was the last act of devotion that he had to her was to offer her his neck.
Yeah, and then he ends up falling out the window and dies.
Very disturbingly so.
Yeah, that looked real, dude. I mean, when the body hit I don't know what it was underneath. It looked like some big
an awning or something.
And it hit it. I'm like, damn. And I mean, So Hakan is,
So-
yeah.
Yeah, Godspeed, Hakan.
Hakan,
Via
yeah.
con
yeah.
Dios and whatnot, but we say goodbye to Hakan at this point.
Yeah, he's gone. And then, we get some other stuff with Oscar and Ellie. I mean, he's definitely into her. He takes her to this little, I don't know what this was. Was this some sort of like place where these teenagers go to kind of hang out? I don't know.
And then he took her to the candy shop or something.
Took her to
like
the candy
that.
shop. She tried the candy, threw up, and then took her to the spot. And they were going to become kind of like blood brothers, right? His idea was to let me cut and you do it. And of course, she ends up, the blood's dripping onto the floor and she jumps to the ground and starts drinking it up. And
Lapping it up.
And if he didn't know, now he knows.
Yeah, and the last time I watched it this time, it was something that I didn't notice the last time around was the effect that it was a different actor. She lifts her face up, and then you realize it's like a middle-aged man's face, right?
Yeah.
Or a middle-aged woman's face.
Yeah,
It was something, but
middle-aged,
it was not her face.
Was not. Yeah.
Like,
and
it
the voice seemed to change.
Yeah.
It seemed to get deeper and, it just sounded like someone older.
Yes.
And then when she she seemed embarrassed or whatever and ran out and went up to the tree and you could see the face and the face it almost looked like a different face than before.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was about though, man.
Well, I thought that was just cool little effects.
I
just
thought it was
the
cool.
idea
Yeah.
Of
yeah.
having different faces that, she's physically shape-shifting. And there are points where I think where her, quote unquote true form comes out. Maybe it happens when she hasn't fed it, or maybe they shapeshift in one degree or another.
Yeah. Do you think there was a scene earlier on when he says you smell funny? So when she's hungry, what sort of smell do you think it gives off?
Death, man.
Like
I don't
death?
know. No, she's
Because she's dying because
we saw the Lost Boys. Vampires
Yeah.
smell bad. It's vampires, my friend.
yeah. But she's getting ready to so I think she's going to end up attacking, and again, I forget the character's name. I don't know if I forget. I'd probably butcher it anyways. But the girlfriend, she's going to end up attacking her, but feeds on her a little bit, but doesn't kill her. So she ends up turning into a vampire.
And that brings us back to the good old vampire lore. And what are the rules of vampires in this, in this regard? She had to attack because Hakan failed and died. So now she is going to have to get the next victim herself, which was it the crazy cat guy or was it somebody else?
So I thought
it was somebody else.
Yeah, I thought it was someone else.
Because I know the crazy cat guy's in another scene after that.
Which I'll talk about that scene. If there was any scene that I just could not do, I just hated was the CGI of all the cats.
Yeah.
Because because when the one girl gets bit, she goes into the house and all the cats can sense that, she's evil. And they all attack her and it was bad. It was horrible.
It was laughable.
It was the only
Took me
thing
out
in
of
the movie that I just was like, couldn't you have figured out a different way of doing it? Because I thought everything they did up to that point, and then after that was great. More practical stuff. They simplified everything, and then you throw these CGI cats in, it looked terrible.
Yeah.
And then doesn't this woman end up in the hospital because of the attack?
Yeah, because Ellie had been feeding on someone, and then did the woman come along at that point or something? But anyway, she had been bit.
Yeah.
And we had already established that almost immediately she was sleeping with the blinds closed and her hand kind of went into the light a little bit and she got burned.
Yes, yeah.
And she rolled over, so she's obviously metamorphosizing. But she shows up because Luke, who was the other character I couldn't really stand in this, was sitting with the crazy cat guy and talking about his buddy that was left. He was the best, and now I've got nothing.
Yeah.
And so she shows up, and they're like, "Oh, there's a lot of people. It's a party in here tonight." And she comes in. She's obviously on something, and the cats attack her.
Yeah.
And she freaks out. They come and take her away, and they take her to the hospital.
Yeah.
Another part that took me out of it was you realize she's in the hospital with her hands tied down, but Hakan was in the hospital having obviously attempted to kill somebody without so much as a guard in the room. You know,
No, there wasn't, was there?
He just comes right out, and they open the window. He opens the window, but
Yeah, yeah.
I digress.
Yeah. So she ends up in the hospital, and I think she's come to the realization that she is a vampire. Probably hard to believe, but
She could. I don't know if she came to the conclusion that she was a vampire, but that she has been infected with something. That's what she said.
She did
the
say
girl
that, didn't
attacked
she?
me, infected me with something.
And then
so.
do you think though that
What?
when she had the doctor
Yeah,
open,
exactly.
do you think it was just to test us to see?
Yeah, I think you might be right that she said or at least we've already established at that point that she knows sunlight burns her. Whether she's come to the conclusion that she's a vampire or not, she knows that the sun is going to harm her.
Yeah. And so she asked the doctor to open up the window, and she basically combusts, right?
And obviously she isn't any better, and she still looks like shit. And the guy walks in, he's like, "Hey, it's a good day. You're probably going home today."
Yeah, right.
Like, I think you're right, pal.
Yeah. But then she bursts into flames, and so she ends up dying. Now her boyfriend is the one that's named Luke?
Yes.
So he goes to Ellie's house, right? Does he get
after that? Yes.
Does he get some sort of like a light bulb moment? Like,
well, he knows that the story from his previous buddy that had been killed, the crazy cat guy, was saying that a kid did it, and he now knows that a kid attacked her too. And so I think he's put two and two together that there's the weird guy that moved in next door with the kid, and all of this started then. And he had to get at least somewhat of a look at her, so she has to fit the description of the kid that he's seen. So I think he has put two and two together, and he's going to investigate the apartment.
And he goes to her apartment, and I think when he gets in there, Oscar's in the kitchen, but he's hiding, right?
Right.
And so Luke goes into the bathroom where Ellie is, because it's during the day, she's sleeping, and I think he goes to kill her, and then
He pulls a knife out, and he's getting ready to stick it in her throat, right?
Yeah, I think so. And then I think Ellie, I don't know if Oscar comes in,
and Oscar pulls his knife.
Oh, that's right.
And he says something along the lines of "stop" or "don't," and it wakes her up.
Yeah,
and
then
hilarity ensues.
Yeah, and then she ends up killing him, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And then I'm trying to. So at this point, man, I'm trying to think like So, at what point we know there's still some bullying here and there, but at what point does
I think we skipped over some stuff.
I'm sure there is,
because
man.
there was the scene. There's plenty of scenes where they are courting, so to speak.
Yeah.
Where he goes into her apartment, and she starts showing him, all these trinkets and artifacts.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
What you assume are things that she's collected. And she said, touch that egg, you could sell that and buy a nuclear power plant, which I thought was an interesting reference.
Yeah, I thought.
But she tells him she's got money, and take all this money, and
but he doesn't want to take it because he's like, well, it's from your victims, and he doesn't. I thought he said that. He
might have said that if it,
so he doesn't feel good about taking the money.
But yeah, because he was telling her that he needed to go distribute flyers or something.
Oh,
to
yeah,
earn money.
to turn
and she's
some
like,
money.
you don't need to do that. I got money.
Yeah, here you go.
She's like, I just need a daddy.
I just need a handler.
But and then there was the scene where they go on the field trip, and it's the scene where Oscar finally stands up for himself.
Yeah, where he hits. What were they trying to do to him?
Well, they were saying, which was funny because one of the things that that they said was, "Hey, we're going ice skating. Have fun. Watch out for the hole in the ice over there."
Yes.
And then the kid comes around in his ear and says, "You want to go swimming?"
Yeah.
And so the kids, they're doing their thing or whatever, and then Oscar finds a stick or a pole, and it's bright red. And so at that point, I realized, that's kind of cool. The red thing. And the kid comes up to him, and they're going to bully him, and then Oscar says, hey, they're like, what are you going to do with that stick? He says, I'm going to hit you with it if you try to do anything. And so he finally cranks back and whacks the bully on the side of the head. He hits back, just like Ellie told him to.
Yeah.
kid falls down, bloody ear, freaking out, and at the same point in time, he's falling down and screaming. The other little girls discover the body.
Yeah.
That's frozen in the lake.
That Hakan had thrown in however long ago that was.
Which,
yeah.
we've established had to be that guy.
Yeah, had to be that guy. Yeah, and then I think they chainsaw him out. He's frozen.
Yeah, they chainsawed him out. Yeah.
It's all frozen and just kind of stiff. And yeah. So, I mean, I'm trying to think, man, what else? You were talking about the one part where she does she come into his house and he doesn't invite her in?
Yes.
And he's messing with her. It's like he's kind of being a dick about it.
He's testing her.
He's
like because at some point right after that he asks her, "Are you a vampire?"
Yeah.
And I think she just flat out said yes.
And that's really the only time we hear, like, I think the word vampire is only used once, I think, through the entire film, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is great. I mean, like the same. I love a zombie movie where they don't say the word zombie.
Yeah, exactly.
Or,
Man
They
of
Steel,
don't state the obvious. It's like, we know what it is. You don't need to state it.
Right.
It's just,
It's been done. We all know what it is.
We do.
You
we
do
do
need the one character to establish verbally that, yes, that's what this is. But you don't need people saying vampire this, vampire that. It can easily devolve quickly into cliche and kitsch.
Pretty much. But when he doesn't invite her in, and she comes in and then she starts like bleeding, dude.
Yeah, she's bleeding out of all of her pores, her hair follicles, her eyes, her nose, her mouth, her ears. And I thought that was a really cool scene.
I did too. I did.
And he invites her in. He says, "That's enough.
Yeah.
You've proven it."
Gives her a hug, I'm sorry, type of thing. And I think that may be where she goes and changes. Because mom comes home. Doesn't mom come home?
I think so. Yeah, and then she had to sneak out the window.
Now, this is the thing I did like is that, one of the tropes for vampires, that like they can fly, they do these things. And it's implied that she is flying. But we never see it.
Or she can crawl along the buildings. Like maybe she doesn't fly, but she can definitely, there is a thing with the weight, because when he first sees her, she's standing on top of the jungle gym. And I don't know if you caught this, but when she jumped off the jungle gym and landed, they're very clearly saying that her knee didn't buckle at all. She didn't have to brace herself when she landed. She landed softly.
Yeah.
So I think she can defy gravity in one way or another.
The thing is, I do like is that we've seen enough of stuff like that. This type of movie just doesn't warrant that. It's showing less, right?
It's a much more.
It's
intimate,
implied, but we don't need to see it.
Yes.
We're able to fill in the gaps.
Exactly, which I think more movies should do this. We don't need to see the spectacle.
Yeah.
We're capable of filling in the blanks. When you leave us a little spot to fill with our imaginations, we become much more engaged in the film.
Yeah. But I think the problem, Jake, is a lot of directors or movies, they don't have the skills to do that. Yeah. I don't think they do, man.
Or maybe they're just, they're working with the union, and the union is telling them, our CGI department needs to get, 60% shots. They haven't hit their, quota
so
yet. So
we're going to make like 50 really terrible looking cats that are going to, I
spend all the money on the cats.
I think they did. I don't know what other, I was trying to think like, rewatching this, like what other CGI was there?
I don't know.
It just seemed like the cats. Like it was the most
notable. It was one cat, because I feel like it was the same cat's face pasted on all the cats, making the same expression, the same.
Oh shit, that's funny. What other scenes before we kind of get towards the end here?
Well, I think
what other stuff have we glossed over?
Is shortly after Hakan falls out the window and we say goodbye to him is when she shows up at his house and they sleep together. And I think that's kind of like the symbolic bonding, where they obviously they don't have sex in the film, but they sleep together naked, which is their bonding moment, where from that time on it's them, they establish that the two of them are a pair, and he is now Hakan. So she transfers from Hakan to Oscar.
Yeah, that's true. He didn't seem weirded out by it at all, No,
he's a disassociative kid. Like he's a maniac in there. And
see, that's the thing.
Nothing's
Jake,
going to weird him out.
At 12, I would have been weirded out by that. But now that you're talking about this, man, maybe you're right. Maybe he was just a week away from shooting up the school because he was just
not a week, a few years.
Few years, yeah.
He is an absolutely troubled kid. He is a maniac under the surface of this 12-year-old kid. I'm convinced of that. Man.
Yeah, and I didn't, honestly, until you started saying it, really didn't look at it like that. I guess, I don't know. I guess I was looking at the good in him and this kind of, I don't know, this love story between the two. But yeah, now that we're talking
it's
I'm
an
like,
ugly
holy
story.
Dude, yeah. Well, which seems to be fitting of this. I mean, really the whole movie, we've talked about it, the dreariness and dread and fucking, it's all just, ugh. Yeah. The only color, we're looking at this scene right now with the mother wearing the dress. It's just the red. I mean, that's all. Honestly, everything else is just so muted, and it's just so. It just seems so depressing.
Yeah,
everything about it is depressing. But
it takes place at a time of the year when everything's dead.
Well, I mean, obviously, it was intentional, right? How can we make this film feel this way? Well, let's do it during winter. Yep. I felt that way through the whole movie. It just felt so
just drab and depressing.
It really did, man. It really did. What else did we maybe miss? I mean, I don't know. We don't have to talk about every scene, but anything that before we kind of get near the end.
I think toward the end, once they, I know I lost my place. Forget it.
Oh, that's okay.
It'll come back.
Come back to you. I mean, I know we find out that the one kid that Oscar hit has an older brother.
Yes.
And the older brother wants a little bit of revenge. Yeah.
And that leads us into the
kind of
scene.
the
if you've
climax.
Seen this movie, you know this scene, and it's a great climax.
It is a great climax, and it is probably the scene that most people would know.
And these kids are premeditating this too. So they put the one kid that is the assistant of Oscar's coach, which throughout the film he's decides to go train.
Yeah, he's lifting weights. He's trying to. Because look, he's been taking a beating for a while, and he's tired of taking that beating. And he's like, maybe I'll get stronger by lifting some weights and stuff. And so he gets a phone call from one of the kids,
one of the other kids.
Yeah, one of the other kids. Hey, and so Oscar's, I'm not sure if I'm going, but he ends up going. And it does seem like just a normal, and there's kids there at the swimming pool.
Definitely.
Like, cause he's doing, he's lifting weights, but he's also doing like, he's doing laps and stuff.
Yeah. I think they said he was doing like water aerobics or something.
Something like that.
Something silly and embarrassing. And
then, but he's there, and then I think the bullies start a fire outside, which prompts his instructor to leave, which gives them the opportunity to do some damage to Oscar, to torment him, to really hurt him. And they basically tell all the other kids to get the hell out.
Yep.
And I don't know if they locked the doors. I don't know if that happened at all. But it was basically Oscar in the pool, the older brother, and then the three bullies. But honestly, it was really just, I mean, I know they were part of the group, but it was really the one kid and his brother.
And it happens as a result of Oscar hitting his kid brother in the ear with the stick. And so he comes in, they plan this all out, and they're going to hurt him in some way.
And so the idea here is, look, if you can hold your breath underwater, I think it was for 3 minutes. Was it 3 minutes?
Yeah, 3 minutes.
If you can do it for 3 minutes, I'm just going to give you a little nick. And he's got a switchblade. If you can't, you're going to get hurt more. And I'm just kind of curious on what hurt more would have been.
Who knows?
What you cutting off a damn limb? What's happening here?
All of these people are psychopaths.
But the brother is the initial bully. He's reluctant with this. He's feeling bad.
Yes.
And the one kid goes to sit on the bleachers and puts his head down.
You got the one kid who's clearly had enough.
And I think he ends up surviving.
Yes, I think
he's the one that ends up surviving, because
you show the shot of it afterward, he's still sitting there with his head in his hands. Yeah.
But what we got here is Oscar underwater with the one brother. He has his hand, basically he's grabbing his hair and he's pushing him down. And And that we get that for a little bit. And then all of a sudden we get this, like, go ahead and explain it, Jay.
Yeah, this great scene, and I had looked into it, and this was not CGI. They did all of these with practical effects, and you hear something, a crunch, if you will, and suddenly you see 2 feet over Oscar's right shoulder running down the length of the pool. So these feet are underneath the water. The shot obviously is Oscar under the water, and you see these feet run the length of the pool.
Kind of like being pulled, right?
Yes,
kind of like being
and
pulled
then
through the water.
Being pulled out of the water, and then suddenly a bloody head drops into the water. And then you hear a crunch, and the arm that's holding Oscar's head under the water lets go and falls into the water.
Falls. Whose head? You think it was the older brother's head?
I think it was the head of the kid. No, it wasn't the older brother's, because it was the kid that was the coach's assistant, the kid that called him, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think that's who that was.
That's whose head it was? Because I thought the older brother was missing the head.
Yeah, and the older brother, he might have been missing his head too. I don't know. A beautiful part about this scene is that they didn't show you any of this stuff happen. You're just catching what you would have seen if you were under the water with Oscar, which the movie is told from his point of view anyway. So it makes sense that he's not going to see all of this happen. But he comes out of the water and he sees her. She's looking right at him in his eyes. She's got blood all over her face, and he just smiles real big, which again, the kid's a fucking psychopath.
I can't argue with you, man. I want to, but I can't. The more we talk about this, you're absolutely right.
But you see the aftermath. You see the bully, the original bully kid, lying in a pool of blood. You see the older brother lying in a pool of blood. You see the headless, coach's assistant on the end of the pool where he got done in. And then, of course, you see the one kid that had clearly had enough of all the bullying and just didn't have the stomach for it.
He's okay.
Not looking.
He's not looking, but he's okay.
Yeah.
He survives.
He survives.
He survives. But now, is this when they leave, man? Is this literally,
It's right after that they leave, yeah.
They leave, right?
I think it cuts right from that to the scene in the train.
In the train?
And
where he's sitting there and it's daylight and
she's in the trunk.
She's in the trunk because they're doing some sort of
they're doing the Morse code.
The Morse
code.
Yeah. And
and that's that.
That's let the right one in. I mean, it's still debatable on whether he did or not let the right one in, but that's the movie.
I think they found each other, and I think she picked the right candidate. I think that if he's either one way or another, he's going to be taking Hakan's place. So if it's a love story, and that's it, he's still going to have to be that guy for her.
You know what I think, man? I think again, I think you're right on the money, but I do think it's not just as simple as you're my handler, my friendly, or whatever the heck they call it, and go get me my stuff. You're kind of like my servant. I truly believe there was a relationship at some point with Hakan and Ellie. And then it just, obviously, he became older, and she's older, but she's also in a 12-year-old body. And I think she does seem to care for Oscar.
Maybe, but
I
what
do.
a 300-year-old human being
I don't know.
see in a 12-year-old kid?
That's the thing. I don't know, man. I don't know if she's... what the hell do you remember after 300 years? Can you remember 200 and what? 88 years prior? I mean, fuck,
I don't know what I was doing 300 days ago.
I know, me too. I've held last week, man, for me. I don't know. I definitely think it's, I mean, I think he's become that, but I think it's more than just the fact that you need to now go get me these things. Yeah. Because I don't see, I know you're saying Oscar, he's crazy, he's a psycho, but I think Oscar right now is not there yet. It's going to take a lot to coax Oscar into bringing Ellie blood.
Well, I think it's, again, like I said before, it's a litmus test. You're romantic, and I'm a cynic.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing all the ugly things that are going on in the subtext. I'm only reading ugly, ugly, ugly.
Yeah.
And you saw a fairy tale. I saw a
Well,
psychopath get
I
groomed
know I
into
did
being a
until you
murderer.
ruined it for me. No, I know.
I got some work to do on myself.
I mean, honestly, well, I'm kind of surprised I didn't see what I'm typically kind of like a half empty guy, like the glass is half empty. And so the fact that I completely missed it, I don't know, man. So, I don't know. Maybe I've changed. Maybe I've grown and matured. Matured.
So did you ever see the American remake?
I did not.
I think I read earlier that there might be another remake happening this year
for the same movie. So a third one?
I did no investigating on it,
but
I did.
Interesting.
I did run a search and saw that there was a Let the Right One In 2022. So I don't know. Maybe Hulu's doing a series.
Oh, I could see a series. I mean, there's a lot of those happening these days. I think I would check that out. Right. I have no urge to see the American remake.
I think I did see it a couple of years ago.
Did you?
You know, it's got Cody Smith-McGee and Chloe Grace Moretz.
Oh,
and
okay.
I did see it. They're both great actors in their own right. And it was directed by Matt Reeves, who most recently did the last Batman movie, or the Planet. He did the Planet of the Apes trilogy.
He did. Okay.
Recently,
okay. Oh, interesting.
But it's a remake.
It's a remake. I mean, I typically stay away from those, especially if I really enjoy the original. I think the only remake there's a few, but the one that's glaring is The Crazies. George Romero's The Crazies. The Timothy Oliphant one was just, oh my God, it was so much better. That the original one was just garbage, dude. I don't think I could rewatch it now.
Well, I think Hollywood has the capacity of improving on a film. I just don't think they have the will to do it anymore.
But yeah. There's a lot of bad ones out there. I would say there's absolutely more bad ones than there are good ones.
Absolutely.
But occasionally they do it right. But I just typically try to stay away from them. But series, I would definitely watch that.
Yeah. There was definitely a time where I would tell you that if I loved a film, I'm absolutely interested to see another interpretation of the same story. Now, if that was the case, then yes, but what it really is it's a cash grab. And, like I said, I think they're capable of improving or telling a story from a different perspective or a new way, but they won't. They'll fuck it up. They always do.
They typically do. Yeah, they typically do. Occasionally they do it well, but all right, man. I think that's the Let the Right One In. Thanks again for coming out, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, hopefully we won't have to wait. It'd been a bit. It's crazy on how time seems to be flying during this, this thing that we're going through still. You would think it would drag, but
it doesn't. It only speeds up until we reach our inevitable death. I'm convinced of this. I'm a cynic, man.
You're a cynic, man. Holy shit.
Life is a relentless march toward our inevitable death.
That's hilarious.
And time just speeds up.
I
actually have, I don't know if I've told you this before, but I have, mathematically it makes sense. It works out, right? When you're 10 years old and a year goes by, that's 10% of the total amount of time that you've been alive, right?
Yeah.
Well, every year you add to your age, that 1 year becomes a smaller and smaller percentage of the total amount of time that you've experienced on the planet, right?
True.
So 1 year when you're 30 is not the same as 1 year when you're 10. So you're perceiving life in a way that is, I don't know. Anyway, that was my point. Mathematically, it makes sense to me that every year that goes by, the older you get is a smaller percentage of the amount of time that you have to reference that year to. So every year becomes more and more insignificant. Every year that passes by.
That sucks.
Just pay attention to the moments, kids. That's where it's all at.
Yeah. If there is some silver lining here, do that. Yeah. Live life to its fullest, man. That's what I would say. All right, man. Well, thanks again, bud. I appreciate it. Everyone who stuck around, appreciate you guys listening, and take care. You listened all the way to the end. We appreciate that. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Ear for Fear Podcast, Twitter at Ear for Fear, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Ear for Fear Podcast. You can also check out our website, earforfear.com. There we list news and events. We're available on all the main platforms, so make sure you tell a friend. We hope you come back. and get an earful.